So I'll let the speakers introduce themselves when they start their presentations, but we're delighted to have you here with us today on this very short webinar. We'll be starting off with Joseph Wilton from Welsh Government, and he'll be giving us an introduction to the adults receiving care and support census data. And then we have some researchers from Cardiff University's Care Centre who are going to take us through how they plan on using this data for research. And finally, my colleague Lindsay is going to give us an update on the ongoing research priority setting work that we are currently doing. So just a little reminder, really, this webinar is an activity run by the Adult Social Care Linked Data Research Group. And the members in that group are researchers who work in a variety of settings. But we've opened up this webinar today to anyone who would like to know more about this data and this census. So after today's webinar, there will be an email detailing on how you can either join our group or stay in touch for future open activities, events, or information. We also have an online forum over on the Social Care Wales Evidence Community platform. So I highly encourage you to take a look at this resource. It's for researchers and those interested in research and how you can use it within your practice. Again, more details will be provided after today's webinar. So today's webinar has been set up on Zoom and it's quite different from a meeting. That's why your cameras and microphones are disabled. But please feel free to use the Q&A function at any point throughout the webinar. We have points throughout where the presenters can answer your questions, and if we don't get through them all, we will answer them in our follow-up email. So I'd like to hand over now to Joseph to begin the first presentation. Thank you all.
Okay. Clara, before you disappear, can you hear me?
All good. Thanks, Joseph.
And you can see me?
Perfect.
Excellent. Right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joseph Wilton, and I head up the Analysis and Innovation team for social care in Welsh Government. What that basically means is that we work on all the data and research that's undertaken in social care that's collected on behalf of Welsh Government. I should say that we are part of a wider network of teams within that collects data around social care. So there's my team, which is responsible for kind of developing the data sets, what it is that we collect, how we use it, undertaking the analysis and working with external organizations. But we then have our colleagues in the statistical services who are responsible for the actual collection and validation of the data and the publication of it. And then we also work very closely with the ADR team in Welsh Government, who are then responsible for taking all that data and putting it in SAIL and making it available for linked data research. So it's a bit of a virtual team that we have, but we all work very closely together. And so I'm here to represent the collective rather than just me on my own. So I'm going to get started with my presentation. Just 2 seconds. Okay, is that visible?
Yeah, you're good, Joseph.
Great, thank you very much. So, I'm here today, firstly, to talk about the Adult Receiving Care and Support Census. So, this is a census that we set up a couple of years ago now. The intention here is to kind of mirror what we do in terms of children receiving care and support, which is, some of you may be aware, is a data collection that's been going on for over a decade now. What it is it's a way of capturing information about all the adults who receive care and support through a local authority care and support plan. So what that basically means, if an adult has had an assessment and has identified eligible needs, then from the local authority, and they will then be part of this census. That includes mostly older adults, but also working adults with disabilities. We set it up back in, we ran the testing and developed it over 2022 with the intention the first year of the collection will be 23-24. We are currently in the process of going through that data, making it, validating it and getting it all in. As you can imagine, it being the first year of the collection, there were some teething issues, so we're still working through some of those with the local authorities, but we're anticipating the data to be available probably around spring next year, and that'll be the first year of the data. I should add that the first year of the data is not going to be linkable. It was a pilot test, it was a pilot year, so it doesn't include the linking fields, but it is still an individual level collection that can be used for standalone analysis, potentially with the possibility of linking in the future, but the linking fields were added from 24-25. So the background to this is that, as you can imagine, if we have lots of collections around children and nothing around adults, that's an obvious data gap. So we ran a consultation around a new code of practice we're developing around the performance and improvement framework. And so we committed to developing this new census. And it was based largely off what we're already doing with the children's collection. So we really took our lessons learned there to develop this new set. The collection itself is broken up into two main sections. What we have is the core details, and this is for all adults who are eligible. And to be clear again, this is adults who have had a care and support plan in the collection year. And that includes their demographics, details around when the plan starts, and then safeguarding, that kind of thing. Section 2 is for only those whose plans are still active at the end of the financial year. So this is more around the type of care and support that they're receiving. The reason we did this is because at the end of if a plan closes during the year, while all the demographic information will still be available, what they were receiving, the kind of care they were support they were receiving, no longer becomes applicable, and the local authorities may not have as easy access to that information. So we limited it so that only those with a care and support plan active at the end, where they are currently receiving that service, they're asked to provide that information. So in a bit more detail, that core section for all adults who have had a plan at any point throughout the year, we have obviously their age, their gender, ethnicity, disability, when their plan started and ended. So the plan starting maybe several years ago. Reasons for the plan closure. So this might be anything because they no longer need a service, because they've moved to a different local authority, and any reason why a plan may close, and if they've gone through any safeguarding procedures in that time. And as I said, from this year onwards, we're also collecting their name and postcode so that information can go into SAIL. We did discuss other linking fields like NHS number, but local authorities may not have ready access to NHS numbers or any other unique identifier. So in the end, we agreed with ADR that name and postcode is probably, as combined with date of birth, gender, ethnicity, disability, etc., is probably going to give us as accurate as we can get, that we can reasonably expect from the local authorities. The next section then is the care and support details. So that includes residents, and by that I mean what kind of residence they have. If they are living either in a adult care home, if they're in the community, so they might be living in their own home, they might be living with family, or what's known as an adult placement scheme or shared lives scheme, which some of you may have heard of, which is effectively foster care but for adults. If they're currently going through safeguarding, what type of care and support they're receiving. And this is where we break down into different service areas, so things like domiciliary care, if they're receiving care at home, or if they're in an adult care home, they might be receiving direct payments, or an adult placement scheme. So this is a multiple choice, so any of them could apply. If they themselves have caring responsibilities and have a carer, while we include this, and it is useful information, it is a little less robust, I should say. It kind of depends and relies on the social worker having undertaken that questioning with the individual. In an ideal world, they'll be able to accurately link a cared for person and a carer within their systems, but unfortunately, most local authorities don't have the capability for that, so it kind of relies on the social worker directly asking if they themselves are caring for anyone else, and what those and if they have a carer themselves, which most is normally included in assessment, but might be buried in free text notes, which makes the information less reliable. And then lastly, events. So this is have had the dates of any assessments, reassessments, or reviews that have happened in that year. So just to give you a bit of background as to how we go through this process of developing and refining and updating the census where needed. We have monthly meetings with all local authorities to review any needs for the data, the use of it, any issues or problems that they're having with the collection. And we work with them to really, this guidance is very much co-produced with local authorities. They're the ones who collect the data and at the point of delivery. They're the ones who are reporting it to us. Well, our job really is to look at the needs of the users and work with the local authorities to agree on a set of guidance that they can all report to. So we can put out very clear definitions where we often refer to different terminology that might arise within different local authorities, where there's issues with consistency. And we're finding more and more the lack of consistency within the data is less to do with how things are being reported, more to do with practice. We can see wild variations in figures between local authorities. They're reporting things in the same way and using the same terminology, but they just have such different setups within their services that the data is just completely different. And then we try to work with them to make sure we fully understand the data and make it as useful as possible. So all these revisions, we try to limit revisions wherever we can. We try, it's only when we're aiding, normally it's to aid understanding of the guidance at this point, rather than to make any changes to the data. Because as you can imagine, if we're changing things throughout the years, it makes it much harder to use for analysis. So we are just trying to make sure we're honing in on exactly what we defined, rather than changing what we're asking for. Right. I also wanted to mention the new census that we're setting up. It is also for adults, but it is for adult unpaid carers. So for those of you who may not be as familiar with the social care sector as others, we define unpaid care as anyone who has who is providing care for a disabled friend, family member. This might be a child, so they might be looking after a disabled child, might be looking after a disabled sibling, or potentially their parents. What we've set up is on the request of the Unpaid Carers Ministerial Advisory Group, and this one is a bit different to the others, to the children and the adults receiving care and support. We originally thought that we would set up a collection that mirrors those, in that it looks at carers who have a support plan with the local authority. But having reviewed that with local authorities, it became very clear that they don't all use support plans in the same way, and some don't use them at all. But what they all do is a carer's needs assessment. So this one is different in that it is a year slice of all those people that have had a statutory carer's needs assessment within a given year. So regardless of the outcome of that assessment, it's just anyone who has gone through that process. We are currently piloting this this new set of guidance with the local authorities, with the intention to publish it ready for the 1st of April next year, so that local authorities can start collecting that data to provide to us after the 31st of March 2026. The type of information we're asking for is a little bit different as well. We still ask the same demographic information, but then we also but we ask more around the assessment, around the outcome of that assessment, and what potentially types of support were offered as a result of that. What we did find is that quite often a local authority will have the assessment, put things into place to support the carer, but then largely be hands-off and leave that unpaid carer to themselves unless they come back for more information. It's not necessarily that they're not providing support or there's not ongoing support, but they normally seems like they put things in place for the unpaid carer to then access at their own in their own way. So it's a bit more, puts a bit more of the onus on the unpaid carer rather than on the local authority to keep that care going. So obviously we have less information because we don't have a care and support plan that has a start and end date. We collect any demographic information if this person's gone through safeguarding, but there's nothing there around dates and reasons for closure. And we also have far less information about what support's being offered. Whereas with an adult who's receiving care and support, who has an ongoing care plan, they have annual reviews, their care may be funded and actively managed. And unpaid carers may be given anything from signposting to making them, allowing them access to specialist services that they can access in their own way, or maybe even a bespoke funded service like respite or short breaks. So we also ask about the residents, and if they are living with the, if they're same as with an adult who's in care and support, if they're in a care home or not, the type of care and support that they're receiving, if they themselves are have care and support needs, and then again any events. So we ask around the dates of the assessment. I forgot to edit the last slide. I'm not Sirica, but thank you for listening anyway.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joseph. And I'm going to hand us over to some of the team in Cardiff University's Care Centre.
My name's Sophie Wood, and I am a research fellow in the Centre for Adult Social Care Research. And today I'm going to introduce CARE to you to let you know a little bit more about who we are and what we're doing. I'm then going to just briefly mention how we might use the adult receiving care and support census in care for our research. Then I'm going to pass you on to Fiona Lagwidja, who's going to talk a bit more about linking the census to other health and social care data sets in SAIL and potential there. And then I'll welcome Abigail Palmer, who is our wonderful new PhD student in care. And she's going to talk about her planned PhD project using the adult receiving care and support census. So next slide, please. So the Care Centre is funded by Health and Care Research Wales. It started in 2023 and we currently have funding up until 2028. It's a collaboration with the Centre for Trials Research, the Cardiff Business School, and we're also working in partnership with Cascade and Exchange Wales. We work closely with Social Care Wales, and we're hosted by the School of Social Sciences. The aim of the centre is to bring together adult social care researchers from across Cardiff universities and other universities as well, to bring a critical mass of research staff working on allied projects, to create strong connections with the social care sector and other social care academics, and to enhance support for involving people with lived experience in social care research. Next slide, please. So our vision is to be a leading research centre in adult social care that envisions a society where every individual with care and support needs receives person-led, dignified, compassionate and high-quality social care, promoting well-being and inclusion of adults of all backgrounds. And our mission is to advance knowledge and understanding in the field of adult social care through multidisciplinary research and collaboration. Next slide, please. So we're really excited about the adult receiving care and support census. Using administrative data for research is one of our key methodological focuses of the centre. And because the adult receiving care and support census is a new data set, it provides the opportunity for the first time to look at the social care support received by adults at a population level and in a standardised way. There's lots of opportunities for data linkage, which Fiona is going to discuss in a minute, but there's also opportunity because of that linkage to look at histories of people, particularly health care histories before receiving care and support. And although the data collection is new and there's only going to be a year's worth of data to begin with, with that linkage, we'll have a wealth of data that we can look at prior to them potentially receiving care and support. And then use that history to make predictions about things like the type of support that they need, but also as more data becomes available, looking at outcomes as well. So I'm just going to mention one study that we are planning, just to give you a bit of an idea about how we might use the census. I'm involved in a study, application to NIHR, where Jeremy Dixon is the PI, on a project looking at recognising and responding to the abuse and mistreatment of people living with dementia within local authority adult safeguarding. So this is it's just a submission at the moment. We submitted it last month, so we don't know if it's successful yet or not. But it's a mixed method study, so we'll be speaking to social workers, to people living with dementia and their carers, but there's also a SAIL work package. And the SAIL work package will want to find out how many safeguarding inquiries were made in Wales relating to people living with dementia who receive care and support, and also what are their health and social care characteristics. And there'll also be a comparative element as well, comparing safeguarding inquiries for other older adults who aren't living with dementia, to see if there are any differences in things like type of safeguarding concern. So I'm now going to pass you over to Fiona, and she can tell you a bit more about the data linkage.
Thanks, Sophie. Hi, everyone. So, as Sophie said, I'm Fiona Loveridge. I am the Deputy Director for Data at the Centre for Trials Research. So that's the Trials Unit at Cardiff University. And so we as a department have been working with routine social care data for over 10 years. In particular, and as Joseph mentioned, that the data on children's social care has been available for quite a long time. So we've been able to sort of link to that for research purposes, in particular looking at evaluating interventions within the children's social care sector. And more recently, though, we've also made use of other administrative routine data that's become available through the SAIL data bank, such as workforce data on domiciliary care workers. So my role within the trials unit is basically to look at how we can utilise and enhance our research by the use of routine data, both for identifying populations for interventions, for example, as well as then looking at outcomes with routine data. And so in the early sort of months of care, in particular before Sophie joined, then I worked with Jonathan and the team to look at how we can do this for the care centre, and looking at adult social care. And so, as Sophie said, this is really exciting that we've, this census is becoming available and can be used for research. One of the other activities that I've undertaken in the last few months, or probably over the last 12 months, was a scoping review. And this was specifically looking at what adult social care data is currently available for linkage across the UK. And in the end, it was actually a relatively small scoping review. We identified 14 articles that were within our scope of the scoping review. And we found that there were some national projects, some local projects, where the use of adult social care administrative data was used. And what we found was that some of the national ones, I'll give you an example of one of those in a moment, but the national ones were based only in Wales and Scotland, but the local projects were across 3 of the nations, so England, Wales and Scotland. And the local projects tended to include one or just a few local authorities or health boards, and a lot of those articles and manuscripts talked about the challenges of both accessing the data on a local level, but also the challenges of doing that at a national level. The other interesting point that we found when looking at the scoping review was the definitions for the adult social care population. So most articles focused on the older adults, although they use different age cutoffs for those categories of older adults and within their population, and very few focused on all age of that population. Only one of the included manuscripts included unpaid carers, and this is because, and as we've already heard, unpaid carers are very hidden, and so often they can be recorded within a primary care GP record. But the scope of this scoping review was to look at where it's recorded at a local authority level, not in other sort of populations as well, or any other data sets. One of them included the domiciliary care workforce, which was the work that we'd actually delivered as part of the trials unit, and that final point there about the linkage. So it sort of shows how lots of people want to be doing this work. They can see the benefit of working with data that's already collected, but it is just challenging. And I think having the opportunity in Wales to have this new census, be able to in the future link that into the SaIL data bank, is a fantastic opportunity for Wales. And so it's kind of been covered already, and I don't want to repeat what others have already said in this talk, but it is possible, therefore, to be able to look at a population level and look at this population in a lot more detail. And by linking the census to other information that is available within the SaIL data bank, it really does give us a better understanding of who this population are, but also who they aren't and who we might be missing. It would be possible to understand the health of the population. As we all know, then there is a huge overlap between social care and health services. And so to be able to understand service provision to the whole of the adult social care population across Wales, between local authorities, by types of service and support, there's huge opportunities there. The other aspect is around the residential status of an individual. So being able to understand whether this person has the same residential code or area as others who are known to be in a care home or to be a unpaid carer, or sort of be able to understand what's happening at an address level is also a huge and fantastic opportunity. And sort of picking up on what Joseph and Ashley mentioned about these long-term opportunities. So it really will be possible in the long term to look at evaluations, look at outcomes over time, but we do need that time to mature. But, you know, the potential of natural experiments, looking at sort of national policy changes or local government, local authority guideline changes will all be possible in the future. And this paper that I've cited on this slide here relates to something that's, sort of shows the possibility for the future, where this project was able to look at a population of individuals who were receiving care and support from Care and Repair Cymru, and were able to sort of look at their outcomes over time. And if you think about all of the different interventions that are available through local authorities and available through charities and from Welsh Government, you know, the potential for looking at evaluating those and looking at outcomes over time is sort of endless, which is really cool. So this project is Care Lab. It's a project that Jonathan and I are leading together, Jonathan Scourfield. I've put on this slide, it's coming soon. We're not in a position to formally announce that this is starting yet, but we are really hopeful that we can sort of provide more information and share more widely in the new year. But the aim really of this Care Lab will be to look at working with colleagues from Welsh Government, ADR Wales and others to link this data into SAIL, but also to be able to look at the census on a standalone way, undertake some qualitative research alongside our quantitative analysis so that we can understand what we're seeing in the data and not make assumptions about what we're seeing. By linking the data in a year or so into the SAIL data bank, the sort of opportunities that I've talked about, we will be hopefully looking at doing some of those, looking at those linkages and outcomes. There was a suggestion about transitions. That's certainly on our wish list. So sort of watch this space. We also then want to look at then the opportunities and feasibility of evaluations in the future to start getting some plans in place for those. And then looking at where else we can to bring in data that will support the research around adult social care and also share our learning with the other nations. And so this is the first nation to be able to bring all of this information together in one place for research. And so looking at whether we can sort of provide some guidance to other nations, I think that would be really nice as well. And I think finally, just sort of underpinning our project is that we are working with members of the public and people with lived experience of being part of adult social care, receiving care and support, or family member of, and we will continue to work with them throughout to make sure that their voices are heard, and that when we're working with data like this, that we're sort of continuing to build trust around how we use data from the government, but for research to benefit the public. So that's all I wanted to say. It is coming soon. We're not formally able to sort of discuss any more detail at the moment, but please do sort of look out for more information in the new year. Thank you, and I'll hand over to Abby.
Thank you, Fiona. I'll just switch on my camera. Hi everyone, my name is Abby, and I'll be talking about what we could learn from the ARCS data about adult safeguarding in Wales, and in particular inequalities related to adult safeguarding. So I'm a first year PhD student at Cardiff, and the focus of my project will be identifying potential inequalities within the adult safeguarding system, and I hope to have access to the ARCS census and the new opportunities it presents for individual level insights into this topic during my project. So this presentation will just broadly introduce the topic of adult safeguarding inequalities, give an overview of my planned research, and detail what safeguarding inequalities insights we might glean from the ARCS census. Please could I have the next slide, Fiona? Thank you. So this diagram sort of aims to show how my topic fits into the wider area of adult safeguarding and adult social care. So of course, the broadest sort of area of the topic is just sort of adult social care. And then we have within that the topic of safeguarding, which is protecting adults, but particularly, or adult safeguarding is protecting adults, but particularly vulnerable adults from abuse and harm. And then within that topic, we have this area of safeguarding inequalities, which is also a very broad area and can include everything from, whether somebody is disproportionately likely to be a victim of abuse or to go through the safeguarding process at all, but also then sort of inequalities of what might happen with individuals depending on their characteristics when they go through that safeguarding process. So that's kind of my focus, and the particular focus is on the safeguarding of those adults who already receive care and support. So every adult who is part of the ARCS census would fall under that umbrella. So that kind of hopefully gives an overview of the topic that I'm focusing on. Please can I have the next slide, Fiona? Thank you. So just to contextualize that concept a bit more, I've just got here some references that just give examples of existing knowledge about inequalities in adult safeguarding. So those inequalities might, for example, be about who is at risk of being abused. So you can see in the top left there, you have in the bold purple text, characteristics of family members. This is one of many factors that can influence somebody's risk of being abused. So in that reference, it said that adult children who experience unemployment or addiction are more likely to abuse their elderly parents. So therefore, the characteristics of those elderly parents' children then becomes a risk factor. Equally, adult safeguarding inequalities might be more to do with the safeguarding process and difficulties of, for example, investigating abuse. So you can see in the top right there, we have an example of dementia, where unfortunately it's been found that, sorry, drinking some water, where unfortunately it's been found that there might be more barriers to completing a successful safeguarding investigation if the alleged victim has dementia. I won't go through all of these examples now in the interest of time, but I hope this gives a context of the great variety of factors that can be involved in adult safeguarding inequalities. And that can be anything from the characteristics of the individual, the people around them, their setting as well, the care setting. And these are all things that can potentially be investigated, or many of these things can potentially be investigated using the ARCS census, and I'll go into more detail into how that can work on the next slide. Please can I have the next slide, Fiona? Thank you. So my hopeful analysis of the ARCS census, the analysis I hope to do, will fall at a certain stage in my PhD project. So right now I'm at the very, very early stages of my project, and I'm still planning my first study, which is a scoping review. And this scoping review hopes to kind of identify better what is known already and what is not yet known about adult safeguarding inequalities, because this is certainly an area where it is likely that there will be gaps in our knowledge. And so that scoping review will hopefully identify areas that we can further investigate in Wales, and which will then inform the exact research questions that we take into the ARCS census. But broadly, in the blue box here, you can see the sort of thing that we'll be looking at when we analyse, or when I analyse the ARCS census for information about adult safeguarding inequalities. And that is, what are the characteristics of adults subject to safeguarding processes by type of abuse, and of adults with protection plans compared with those receiving care and support who have not been subject to safeguarding. So when we talk about characteristics, these are all things, all bits of data that we can get from the ARCS census. And the next slide has more details of that. If I could have the next slide for you, please, Fiona. Thank you. So I don't want to go and spend a lot of time on this, because I think that the data dictionary has already been kind of explained. But I just want to briefly go over what a unique opportunity this is to have individual level data on adult safeguarding pretty much for the first time in Wales on this scale. So there has obviously been a lot of previous data made available on adult safeguarding. Just to give one example, there was local authority level data available until 2019, or rather newly released until 2019, pertaining to numbers of particular safeguarding concerns in local authorities. So for example, you can look online and you can see how many women over 65 were subject to a neglect safeguarding procedure in a particular local authority in 2018. And that's incredibly useful, and we can get some insights from that. And from that, we can potentially get an indication that there are some inequalities, but obviously it's not individual level data, it's local authority level data. And what we have now with the ARCS census is a much more large and rich data set, which allows us to take information like the information in the blue box just there on the right about whether somebody was subject to safeguarding procedures, the type of alleged abuse, the category of safeguarding, and whether they had a specific protection plan in place. And we can compare that at once on an individual level to lots of different factors, whether they had caring responsibilities, their age, all of those things, all of those bits of data that have already been explained. And this opens up much more potential for much richer, more enlightening multivariate analysis to see exactly what combination of factors might put somebody at higher risk of having a safeguarding referral or having a particular outcome from that safeguarding referral. So that's the particular opportunity we have here, and that's how we hope, that's how I hope to answer that question about what are the characteristics of people who have those safeguarding referrals more often. Can I please have the next slide, Fiona? Thank you. So we're back to this slide again, except this time I have added, as you can see, little symbols. They're just little clipboard symbols. And I've used that to just show you how those existing findings, which already have kind of given us some indication of safeguarding inequalities, are related to factors that actually are also included in the ARC census. So you can see here in the purple writing, factors like type of service setting, whether somebody has dementia, whether they have an intellectual disability, whether they live in a deprived area, a deprived local authority specifically. All of that information is also included in the ARC census. And so we can see that all of those sort of existing threads of knowledge that have, kind of emerged about adult safeguarding inequalities, we can potentially follow those further with the ARC census on a scale that's much larger and much more detailed than potentially we've been able to do before. So that's what's really exciting, I think, about this data. And if I could have the next slide, please, Fiona. So I won't read all of this, but in conclusion, I've talked about the definition of adult safeguarding inequalities. I've talked about the opportunities that the ARC census provides for finding out more about this. And I've given a sort of brief overview of the topic of adult safeguarding inequalities and what that might involve. So if I could have the next slide, please, Fiona. Thank you. So here are all of the references that are from the papers that I mentioned today, and I am happy to take any questions at any point. I don't know if there's time for that now, or if people would prefer to email, but my email address is at the bottom of the screen there, so I'm very happy to take questions if people want to email them afterwards as well. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Abigail. Thank you, Sophie and Fiona. So I am running quite a tight ship today, keeping to time. So before we move on to our final presenter, my colleague Lindsay, I just want to add in here that this webinar is open. So there might be individuals here today or watching this at a later date who are quite new to linked data research and the SIL data bank. You can look up more around the opportunities and benefits and find out more about this on the Social Care Wales, ADR Wales Social Care Team web pages. So that was a bit of a mouthful then, but I can provide further information on linked data research within adult social care and the SIL data bank to anyone who might like to know more. So finally, we have 15 minutes left. Lindsay, please don't feel the need to rush through your presentation. Lindsay works alongside myself, and she's going to give us an update on our ongoing research priority setting exercise. Thank you.
Thanks, Tara. Afternoon, everyone. Prynawn da, everyone. I'll just share my screen. Sorry, I'm all fingers and thumbs. There we are. Let's put that on. So, as Tara said, my name's Lindsay Cross. I'm one of the research officers based halfway between Social Care Wales and between ADR Wales. I am the yin to Tara's yang, or aunt to her deck, however you want to describe us, but we come as a duo. And yet one of the projects that we've been working on, well, it's taken up a huge amount of our brain space in the past few months, is research priority setting for the linked data, using linked data for adult social care data. So just to give you a little bit of a background, as I said, we're funded by ADR Wales and we sit within Social Care Wales. This is a joint venture where you, by listening to everybody else's presentations this afternoon, you can see that getting adult social care data into this linked data field is a massive drive right now. And thank goodness, because as we know, health and various other fields have had the benefit of utilising linked data research to evidence-based policies and practice for many, many years now. But adult social care has always been that missing link. So as you can see, we have a huge amount of work being done around building researcher capacity and building researcher buzz and excitement. Welsh Government are building the census, the adult social care census. But Tara and I, by working with Social Care Wales, we're developing more intimate relationships with the local authorities and with third sector organisations and people with lived experience to find out how linked data research can be beneficial to the adult social care sector in Wales, and how practically we can use all of this research and all of these findings and experiences to benefit the adult social care sector, the professionals working in it, and those who are receiving the care or accessing the care. So to kickstart this project, Tara and I started in post 18 months ago, and the first thing that was agreed to do was that we were going to undertake a research priority setting activity. Initially, it was envisaged that this would be a far shorter activity, but as soon as you get into it, you realise the incredible complexity of adult social care. So this was a humongous task that we undertook. So this has been an incredible learning journey. So we we decided to do this research priority setting activity, and to support us to do this, we appointed an independent facilitator who had experience with the James Lind Alliance methodology. So what we've done is we've taken aspects of the James Lind Alliance methodology and the Adelphi methodology, mashed it together. But even though it was a mashup, we've still been very reflected through this journey, because this has very much been a pilot, because this has never been done on adult social care before, let alone an entire sector or something. So setting these priorities has been a real journey. So what sort of process have we followed for this? So we established a working group in November 2023, and the working group that we established consists of a number of people from local authority, from academia, from policy, and with people with lived experience, as well as the third sector in adult social care. And what we did was then we had to mind map what exactly were we going to go out and ask our stakeholders. The main aim and objective of this research priority setting was to find out what exactly would be useful for those who are accessing the service and using the services. So what research would be useful for you? So we had to co-design a project plan, and it took forever. Like all of the other members of this webinar have mentioned, defining different terms for adult social care has been incredibly challenging, because there is no standardization at this point in time. So it took a lot of work to sort of define what adult social care was, what was adult social care data, and what did we want to ask people to give us that intelligence on what was useful research. So we went on and we co-produced that plan. That took us several months, and then we needed to find out how exactly that we were going to ask stakeholders what was useful to them. So we had to develop a survey, because bearing in mind that we wanted to reach the whole of Wales, so we needed a mechanism that enabled us to be able to reach geographically lots of different people. But with it only being Tara and I, we couldn't physically be on the road constantly. So we developed a survey. The survey, when you looked at it in its final form, was very simple. It only had 2 questions in it. The survey asked stakeholders and those in operations, basically, what challenges have you got with the adult social care sector in Wales right now? And if research could sort of answer the challenges that you got, or help with the challenges that you have, what would that look like? So, because it was completely unfair to ask people who weren't researchers, who weren't used to linked data research methods, what exactly do they want researching? So what we did was we asked people those basic questions, and then Tara and I have spent a very, very, very long time going through all of that data and picking out researchable questions from the narrative. It's been a process, and the things that have come out there have been absolutely amazing. I can't even begin to tell you the depth and breadth of it. So initially, when you're doing this, when you're going through the survey, what your aim and objective is to produce like a list of summary questions. So you join together all of them, the sort of similar data points that are asking the same sort of question, and summarize that into a generalized summary question. So you might have a number of different data points underneath one summary question. But as Tara and I were going through this process of data analysis, it became very evident that having very specific summarized research questions wasn't feasible. So what we've had to do is we've had to develop research areas. So underneath these research areas, there could be a number of different research questions which researchers would be able to pick up and do. But for the purpose of this exercise, Tara and I have produced research areas instead of questions. This process resulted in 16 different research areas. We finally today, we're hopefully going to send them out for the final check with our working group. And then these research areas then will be taken into a final consensus setting workshop, which is due to take place in March next year. And what it will be is another mixed discipline workshop, about 20 to 24 participants, targeted invitations, where they'll come together for a 3-hour long workshop with a group of professional facilitators who will go through these research areas, and they will decide between them the top 10 research priorities for the adult social care sector in Wales, which has the potential to be answered using linked data research methods. So that is where we're at with our research priority setting at the moment. It has been an incredible and intense journey, but it's been well worth it. But to give you just a little bit of a flavour of some of the things which have come out, some of our sort of interim early emerging findings so far are what a lot of people have asked for is questions around forecasting future demand and resource allocation for social care services. So as we know, budgets are extremely tight everywhere, not just in social care, but everywhere. But that was a big thing that came out of our stakeholders' conversations from their survey responses, but that they needed to know what they were planning for in the future to ensure resource and finances were put in the places that they needed to be. Understanding how different types of provision impact the health and well-being of people using care services. So that you could really see through the data responses, through the survey responses, is that lots of everybody cared about the people that they were providing services for. So they wanted to know what the impact was that the social care services was having on them in lots of different ways, because as we know, life is not linear. And the other really interesting one that's come out is exploring the role of digital innovation and the use of technology within adult social care provision. Now, I was quite naive when I read this, these data points, in the sense that I thought, oh, are we referring to the red button that people wear on their wrists, or are we referring to telecare and things like that? Yeah, they did appear. But other things that came up were things like Amazon Alexa and how service provision, different services and different mechanisms are being utilised. Things which you wouldn't even imagine, and what impact is that having on people? So maybe like falls prevention, you know, like maybe it's linked up to an Alexa or an Apple Watch that detects falls and things. It was absolutely fascinating, things that I had never even thought about. But yeah, there are so many research questions that could pop up underneath this. It's absolutely amazing. So following on from that consensus setting workshop, we will be sharing all of our findings, our top 10 research priorities according to the population from our stakeholders, from those with lived experience, from those who are working in the sector, those that are planning for the sector. These are their top research priority areas. They are all going to be shared far and wide. We're going to shout from the rooftops with it. We're also going to share our journey and the learnings that we've had on this journey, because it's been incredible and it's been intense, but these are all amazing things that we've got to share. But also there were a huge number of data points that came out of the survey that, although couldn't be answered using linked data research methods, they were still really feasible research questions. So we're actually going to put together a document and also share those far and wide, because even though we couldn't answer them in the remit and scope of this project, well, not answer them, but they didn't fit in with the scope of this project, we could certainly then share them with others. And then for Tara and I, post-project and post-publications, we're going to use the research areas, the research priority areas now, to formulate a plan of data acquisition. So these lovely relationships that we've been building up with the local authority, We've also got a list of data sources which would be highly beneficial to answer those research themes and questions which have come out. So we're going to utilise those to assist with our data acquisition conversations with the local authorities going forward now, and hopefully be able to help bring some of that data into sale with those interested local authorities. So yeah, it's an exciting adventure, but that's where we're at the moment. But any questions, please just drop me a message, because I know we're tight on time. But I shall pop my email into the chat. Well, Tara will share the emails afterwards, but if anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to drop us a message. Thank you.
I just want to say a big thanks to the presenting team. Thank you for the time and the energy that you put into developing your slides for us today and sharing with us. Over the next few days, I'll be sending all the resources from today's webinar over to everyone here and for the people who couldn't make it. There's also going to be a feedback form, and then I'll list different ways that you can stay in touch with us. So we look forward to sharing future activities and events from the Adult Social Care Linked Data Research Group with you all. And lastly, enjoy your time off over Christmas and New Year, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you all.